All right, so now that we've built the 5 puzzle cube parts, we want to assemble those together to make our entire cube. And before we do that, we have to talk about what's called degrees of freedom. Okay, this is my illustration of what that looks like. Any individual part is able to move along the X, Y, or Z axis, meaning it can slide up and down that axis. It can also rotate about that axis, so that each part in our graphics window display will have what's called 6 degrees of freedom. Okay? So when we bring them into Inventor, we have to get rid of all 6 degrees of freedom in order for the pieces to no longer move and to be fully constrained to each other. So in Inventor, I'm going to click New. We use standard parts to build the original 5 part files. We're now going to use what's called an assembly file to bring those parts in and build our assembly. So I'm clicking standard.iam and I'm going to click Create. If you get an error message, it has to do with the way that assembly files are associated with our H drive, but it'll work just fine. Okay. Now, the default setup in Inventor on your computer does not automatically ground the first piece. Ground simply means that that part has been locked to the XYZ axis. We want that to happen. So there's one setting you have to change before we bring any of our parts in. And to get to that setting, I'm going to click on Tools. I'm going to click on Application Options. There's a lot of features in here, but we're looking specifically for the Assembly tab. And then from there, I want to place the check mark next to Place and Ground First Component at Origin. Okay. Yours will not be checked. We need to make sure that we add that so that the first piece we bring in is automatically locked to my XYZ axis. Once that's done, I'm going to go to the Assembly tab, and the first option I want to click is Place. Place is going to allow me to select the parts that I want to bring into my graphics display, and the first piece we bring in will be grounded, meaning it's not going to move. Okay. So I'm going to select my red part as my grounded piece. I hit Open. It places it on the XYZ axis. Notice that I can make multiple copies of that part. In this case, it doesn't make sense to do that because there's only one red part. But let's say you were building a car in Inventor and I designed one wheel. I could bring that wheel in 4 times right off the bat, and it would use the same wheel over and over again within the assembly. Okay. If I'm happy with just having the one, I can right-click and either hit Escape or hit OK, and it's placed that part on my XYZ axis. Okay. Notice in my browser that there's a little pin over the symbol that represents my red part. That pin simply means that this has been grounded. It's not going to move. Okay. Notice too, if I hover over the part with my cursor, next to the cursor again is that little pin, so that when I select this, it will not move off of the origin along the XYZ axis. That's what we want. Okay, we're going to ground and constrain all of our other pieces to this one that's not going to move. Second step then is to bring in another part. So I have one piece that I've brought in. I'm going to bring in another one, and these 2 pieces I want to constrain together, and we'll talk about what constraints are. Okay. So now I have 2 pieces. This one's fully grounded, I know by the pin. This one is not. Notice how this one can still be moved. I can rotate that individual piece in any direction I want. So there's still 6 degrees of freedom on that piece. The way I brought it in originally was not the right orientation or the way that I was expecting the pieces to assemble together. And for some of you, this being the first time doing it, it may confuse you to not see it the way you want it to be. So I would encourage you to use what's called the free rotate to move this piece at least in the general direction of how the 2 pieces are going to come together. Once I had that piece on here, I'm going to use the constraint function. There's lots of different types of constraints, but for the purposes of this project, we only need to use the first one, which is what's called a mate constraint. Mate constraint will allow me to have my faces touch each other and have my edges flushed up. Okay. So I'm using the first one, mate constraint, and I'm going to say I want this face to mate with, and I'm holding down F4 to allow me to rotate, this face. Notice that it moved the one piece, not the other one, because the one is grounded. And if I'm happy with that, I hit apply. Okay, so I used one mate. I can see that here on my browser. One mate for these faces together. Now I'm not done, right? This piece still moves. It still has 4 degrees of freedom. I only got rid of 2 of them. I need to add 2 more constraints to this object. So I'm going back to constraint. I'm still using the mate as the type of constraint, but I'm going to change my solution. I don't want to use mate now. I want to use flush. I want to flush my edges. So I want this edge and this edge to be flush, and if I'm happy with that, I hit apply. And I want this edge and this edge to be flush, and if I'm happy with that, again, I hit apply. Okay. So you look at the browser then, my red piece has these three constraints on it, and it's in common with this blue piece here. If I take my cursor now, notice the blue piece no longer moves, which is good. It means it's also fully constrained, just like my original part. Let's repeat the process. Go back to place, bring it in this yellow part. Okay. This one's already in the proper orientation. This is the direction it'll be once it's actually part of my cube. I'm going to again use mate, and F4 is the hotkey that allows me to free orbit this piece. This bottom surface, F4, this top surface, and then apply. Okay, so it's touching where it needs to. Now I'm going to flush my edges. So I want this edge and this edge to be flush, and this edge and this edge to be flush. When I do that, I notice that this piece still moves, okay, and this piece overlaps this other piece. Right? I've made an error in my original design, and I need to go back and check, okay, what's wrong with its design? Is it my blue piece? Is the gap here too big, or is it my yellow piece? Okay. There's two ways to go about that. I can go back and open the part file, right? I go to File, Open, and select my yellow piece. Or, from the assembly file, if you double-click on a part, notice what happens to my ribbon. If I double-click on this part, my ribbon has changed back to the ribbon that we use when we're using a part file. It'll actually allow me to edit this part in the assembly, which is a really nice feature, because then I can kind of troubleshoot where the errors are. Okay. So now that I'm back as if I'm working on my yellow part file, I can go to the browser and look at, okay, where is this issue coming in? I'm looking at the original sketch, 1.5 by 0.75. That's right, okay. And I look at the original extrusion. Aha, I extruded at 0.8, right? So it's 0.05 too big, and that's why I have that gap in my piece. So I'm going to go ahead and correct that. I want that to be 0.75 and hit OK. If I'm happy with that, I'm going to return then by clicking the return button to my assembly. Okay? So this piece still has 2 degrees of freedom that we need to take care of, and I'll do that by adding one more constraint. So I want to flush this edge with this edge and hit apply. So I found that error. I was able to correct that by simply modifying my part file even while I'm working within the assembly. Last step then would be the last 2 pieces. I'm going to bring them both in at the same time. If you're able to bring all 5 pieces in and it's not necessarily going to confuse you, you can go ahead and do that. If you want to work one piece at a time as you're building it, that's okay as well. Okay. So I'm going to quickly constrain these ones as well. Again, I'm using the mate constraint. I want to mate this face, top of the yellow here, apply, switching my solution to flush this edge with this one, apply, and flush this one with this one, apply, and then finally the last piece. Switch to flush. Kind of can check, okay, am I missing any constraints? Yeah, it still moves. I'll add one more. Flush between here and here. Once I've added all the pieces and they're all fully constrained, I should be able to check and I should be able to select these pieces and none of them should move, which is kind of the goal, to have a fully assembled cube. Last step then is to save this. I can call it assembly 2 if I want. When this pops up, it's going to ask you, do you want to save the assembly? This is the initial save, meaning I've never saved it before. Yes. It's also asking, do you want to save part 2? Remember, I edited my original part file. In this case, if I'm happy with the edit I made, the answer is yes, I want to save that as well. But you can change these individually. If I don't want to make changes to my original yellow part file, I don't have to. Okay. And then I will hit OK, and it saves that. And this is our completed puzzle cube.